I followed Peter through the rusted gates, salt air stinging my face. The warehouse stretched before us like a cathedral of decay, its windows black against the storm-dark sky. "I told you I'd find us a place untouched by anyone," he said, producing a keycard from his jacket pocket. The electronic lock clicked open with surprising efficiency. Inside, our footsteps echoed in the vast emptiness. Moonlight sliced through broken skylights, casting geometric shadows across the concrete floor. The ocean roared beyond the walls, waves crashing against the seawall with relentless fury. Peter walked to the center of the space, his silhouette sharp against the pale light. "Perfect, isn't it?" I moved to one of the tall windows overlooking the water. White foam exploded against the rocks below, disappearing into darkness before the next wave struck. "What exactly are we doing here, Peter?" He approached from behind, his reflection ghost-like in the glass. "Waiting." "For what?" His hands settled on my shoulders, warm through my coat. "You'll see." The wind howled through gaps in the structure, creating a symphony of loneliness. I pressed my palm against the cold window, watching my breath fog the glass. "How long do we wait?" "Not long now." His voice carried something I couldn't identify. Anticipation, perhaps, or hunger. I turned to study his face, but he'd already moved away, checking his watch in the moonlight. The keycard glinted in his other hand. The footsteps came from the eastern entrance, deliberate and unhurried. I straightened, my pulse quickening as a figure emerged from the shadows between the support beams. He moved like smoke, all dark clothing and careful grace. When he stepped into the moonlight, I caught glimpses of sharp cheekbones, eyes that seemed to hold secrets. "He told me you love it when the world disappears," he said, his voice low and rough like whiskey. I glanced toward Peter, but he'd withdrawn to the far side of the warehouse, becoming another shadow among many. My mouth went dry. "I don't know what you mean." The stranger smiled, a curve of lips that promised danger. The noise, the expectations, the rules. He stepped closer. All of it gone. The ocean crashed against the seawall, punctuating his words with primal rhythm. I backed against the window, feeling the cold glass through my coat. "Who are you?" "Does it matter?" He reached out, fingertips barely grazing my cheek. "Tonight, I'm whoever you need me to be." His touch sent electricity down my spine. I should have pulled away, should have called for Peter, should have done anything except lean into that gentle contact. "This is insane." "Yes," he agreed, his thumb tracing my jawline. "Beautifully insane." The wind shrieked through the warehouse, drowning out rational thought. His hand slipped into my hair, fingers tangling in the strands. The receipt from dinner crinkled in my coat pocket as he drew me closer, our bodies almost touching. "Your husband knows exactly what he's doing," he whispered against my ear. The words should have shocked me. Instead, they ignited something wild and reckless in my chest. I tilted my face up, meeting his gaze in the pale light. "Does he?" "He knows you need this, the freedom to choose without consequence." Our lips met in the space between one wave crash and the next. His kiss tasted like salt air and forbidden promises. I kissed him back with 7 years of marriage weighing on my shoulders, 7 years of careful conversations and predictable routines. When we broke apart, breathing hard, he traced the line of my collarbone with reverent fingers. "The world disappears," I said, understanding finally. "Everything but this moment." He guided me deeper into the shadows, away from the windows, away from the possibility of being seen. The concrete floor felt cold against my back as moonlight painted patterns across our skin. What happened next belongs to the darkness and the roar of the sea. The rest stays between us and the salt-scented air, written in breath and heartbeat, and the ancient rhythm of waves against stone. Afterward, I lay listening to the ocean's relentless assault on the seawall. The stranger had vanished as quietly as he'd appeared, leaving only the scent of his cologne and the taste of salt on my lips. I pulled my coat around me, sitting up in the shadows. My body hummed with satisfaction and guilt in equal measure. The warehouse felt different now, charged with the electricity of what had just occurred. Peter materialized from the darkness, his footsteps echoing across the concrete. He didn't look surprised or angry. If anything, he seemed satisfied. "Olivia, I'm here." My voice sounded strange, rougher than before. He approached slowly, giving me time to compose myself. When he reached me, he extended his hand, helping me to my feet. "How do you feel?" The question was loaded with meaning. I searched his face for judgment and found only curious anticipation. "Different," I admitted. He nodded as if this was exactly what he'd hoped to hear. "Good different?" I thought about lying, about pretending remorse I didn't feel. Instead, I met his eyes directly. "Yes?" The wind had died down, leaving only the steady crash of waves below. Peter smiled, the expression both tender and triumphant. "Then it worked." "What worked?" "The experiment." He brushed a strand of hair from my face. "The freedom." We walked back toward the entrance in silence, our footsteps synchronizing on the cold concrete. Peter's hand found mine, his fingers intertwining with mine, as if nothing had changed, but everything had changed. I could feel it in the way I moved, in the weight of secrets settling in my chest, in the lingering sensation of another man's touch on my skin. At the door, Peter paused to slide his keycard through the reader. The lock disengaged with a soft click, and cool night air rushed in from outside. "Will you tell me who he was?" I asked. Peter considered this, his thumb stroking across my knuckles. "Does it matter?" "I suppose not." The stranger had been right about that. In the moment, identity had been irrelevant. Only sensation and choice had mattered. We stepped out into the salt-tinged darkness. The warehouse loomed behind us, its broken windows like empty eyes watching our retreat. "Do you regret it?" Peter asked as we reached the car. I turned to look back at the building where I'd crossed a line I'd never thought I'd cross, where I'd discovered something about myself I'd never suspected. "No," I said, and meant it completely. Peter's smile was radiant in the moonlight. He opened the car door for me, ever the gentleman, as if he hadn't just orchestrated his wife's infidelity. "Good," he said softly. "That's exactly what I hoped you'd say." The drive home passed in contemplative silence. Peter's hand rested on my thigh, possessive and warm, while I stared out at the dark coastline rushing past our windows. Our house looked foreign when we pulled into the driveway. The porch light cast everything in amber tones, making familiar shapes seem strange and new. I felt like an intruder approaching someone else's life. Inside, Peter moved through our nightly routine with careful normalcy. He hung his jacket in the closet, checked the locks, turned off the lights. I watched him, this man I'd been married to for 7 years, wondering how long he'd been planning tonight. "Peter?" He turned from the kitchen sink, eyebrows raised in question. "How long have you known?" "Known what?" "That I needed that." He dried his hands slowly, considering his words. "I've suspected for months. The way you'd go quiet during dinner, the way you'd stare out windows like you were looking for something." I leaned against the doorframe, feeling the truth of his observation settle over me. "And you decided to do something about it. I decided to give you a choice." He folded the dish towel with precise movements. "Real freedom Without consequences for our marriage. Without consequences? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Peter, I just slept with another man. With my blessing. He approached me, his eyes serious. The only consequence is what we choose to do with this knowledge. I woke alone, sunlight streaming through our bedroom windows. Peter's side of the bed was cold, the sheets pulled tight in military precision. His phone buzzed on the nightstand, displaying a text from someone named Marcus. I rolled over, burying my face in Peter's pillow. It smelled like his cologne and the faint saltiness that seemed to follow him everywhere. The events of the previous night felt like a dream, distant and unreal in the harsh morning light. Downstairs, I found Peter in the kitchen, fully dressed and drinking coffee. He looked up when I appeared, his smile warm but guarded. Sleep well? Eventually. I poured myself coffee, noting how my hands trembled slightly. Peter, we need to talk about last night. Do we? His casual tone made me pause. I studied his face, looking for signs of regret or anger, finding only calm acceptance. I cheated on you. You experienced something I wanted you to experience. He set down his mug, meeting my gaze directly. There's a difference. Is there? I sank into the chair across from him. Because it doesn't feel different. It feels like betrayal. Whose betrayal? Yours of me or mine of conventional expectations? The question hung between us like smoke. His phone buzzed again, and this time he glanced at it, his expression shifting subtly. Who's Marcus? I asked. Peter's pause was almost imperceptible. A friend. The kind of friend who arranges strangers in warehouses? His smile was answer enough. How many times? I asked, my coffee growing cold between my hands. Peter reached into his wallet, withdrawing a small slip of paper. A receipt from the warehouse rental, dated 3 months ago. The first of many, I realized. This was the first time for you, he said carefully. But not the first time I've facilitated such encounters. The words hit me like a physical blow. For other women? For us? For our marriage? He leaned forward, his eyes intense. Olivia, we were dying. Slowly, quietly, but dying nonetheless. I could see you withering, becoming someone you never wanted to be. So you decided to pimp me out? I decided to give you back your agency. His voice remained calm despite my accusation. The freedom to choose desire over duty, to remember who you were before you became a wife. I stood, pacing to the window that overlooked our manicured backyard. Everything looked so ordinary, so suburban and safe, nothing like the wild darkness of the warehouse. And if I want to see him again, then you see him again. And if I don't, then you don't. I turned to face him. What about what you want? Peter's smile was sad and beautiful. I want you to be happy, even if that happiness doesn't include me. The receipt lay on the table between us, evidence of his careful planning, his willingness to risk everything for my liberation. It includes you, I said finally. It has to. 3 weeks later, Peter placed his hands on my shoulders as we stood in our living room. The gesture was identical to the one in the warehouse, but the context had shifted everything. It feels like the night belongs to us, he said, echoing his words from that first evening. I smiled quietly, the same response I'd given then. But now I understood the weight behind both our statements. The night did belong to us, all of it, including the parts we'd shared with strangers. His phone buzzed on the coffee table. Another message from Marcus, another opportunity, another chance to step outside the boundaries of conventional marriage. I picked up the device, scrolling through weeks of arrangements. The keycard from the warehouse sat on the mantelpiece, a talisman of transformation. "Do you regret it?" I asked, turning the phone over in my hands. "Do you?" I asked first. Peter considered this, his gaze moving from my face to the keycard and back. "I regret that it was necessary. I don't regret that it happened." I nodded, understanding the distinction. We'd saved our marriage by breaking it, found each other by getting lost. "The price," I said, thinking aloud. "What about it?" "We can never go back to who we were before. To innocent love, to simple trust." Peter's expression grew solemn. "No, we can't." I deleted Marcus's number from the phone, watching the contact disappear. Then I placed the keycard in the drawer with other forgotten things. "But we can go forward," I said, "as who we are now." Peter's kiss tasted like salt and possibility, like the ocean that had witnessed our transformation. Outside, the world continued its predictable patterns, unaware that everything had changed. 3 weeks later, I found myself standing in the produce section of a grocery store I'd never been to before, holding a list written in Peter's careful handwriting. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in that peculiar supermarket glow that made even the ripest tomatoes look slightly artificial. I was reaching for a bag of spinach when I heard it, a laugh that made my blood freeze. Marcus's laugh, unmistakable even across the crowded store. My hand stilled on the plastic bag, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. But when I turned, it was just a stranger with a similar pitch to his voice, talking animatedly on his phone about weekend plans. Not Marcus. Of course not Marcus. He was 3,000 miles away, probably sitting in some conference room, probably having forgotten all about me already. I finished shopping quickly after that, my hands shaking slightly as I loaded the car. The episode reminded me how thin the membrane was between my old life and this new one. How easily the past could reach through and grab me by the throat. Peter was waiting when I got home, sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop open, grading papers. He looked up when I entered, and something in his expression told me he could read the tension in my face. "What happened?" he asked, closing the laptop. I set the groceries on the counter and told him about the laugh, about the moment of panic in the produce aisle. As I spoke, I watched his face carefully, looking for signs of impatience or frustration. But there were none. He just listened, nodding occasionally, his eyes never leaving mine. "It's going to happen," he said when I finished. "For a while. The mind doesn't just let go of 4 years." "I know." I began unpacking the groceries, needing something to do with my hands. "It's just... I thought I was further along than that." Healing isn't linear. He stood and began helping me put things away. "I read that somewhere. In one of those self-help books my sister keeps sending me." I smiled, despite myself. "Your sister sends you self-help books?" "Ever since the divorce. She thinks I need guidance." He held up a can of tomatoes, examining the label with mock seriousness. "Last month, it was finding your authentic self through mindful living. This month, it's something about the power of positive thinking." "And do they help?" "Not really, but this one thing stuck with me, about healing not being a straight line. How it's more like..." He paused, searching for the words. "Like learning to walk again after an injury. Some days you take 10 steps forward, some days you fall down. But as long as you keep trying, you eventually get where you need to go." I leaned against the counter, watching him arrange items in the refrigerator with the same methodical care he brought to everything. "Where do you think we're going?" "I don't know," he said, and there was something beautiful in his honesty. "But I know where we're not going. We're not going back." That evening, we cooked dinner together. Pasta with the spinach I'd bought. garlic bread that filled the kitchen with warmth. We ate by candlelight, not because it was romantic, but because Peter had forgotten to replace the burnt-out bulb in the dining room fixture. The conversation flowed easily, touching on his students, my job search, the book he was reading. Normal things. Comfortable things. After dinner, we sat on the porch watching the sun set over the water. The ocean stretched endlessly before us, painted in shades of amber and rose. A few boats dotted the horizon, their sails catching the last light. "I used to think love was supposed to feel like drowning," I said suddenly. The words surprised me. I hadn't planned to say them. Peter turned to look at me. "What does it feel like now?" I considered this, watching a seagull dive for fish in the shallows. "Like breathing," I said finally. "Like something I can do without thinking about it, without it hurting." He reached for my hand, intertwining our fingers. His palm was warm and slightly rough from working in his garden. "I like that better." "Me too." As darkness settled over the water, we moved inside. Peter graded papers while I read on the couch, my feet tucked under his leg. The silence between us was comfortable, full of the kind of peace I'd never experienced before. No walking on eggshells, no analyzing every word or gesture for hidden meaning. Just ease. Later, as we were getting ready for bed, Peter paused in the bathroom doorway. "You know what I realized today?" "What?" "I haven't thought about Sarah in 3 days. Sarah was his ex-wife, the one who'd left him for her yoga instructor. For months after I'd moved in, her ghost had haunted the house as surely as Marcus's had haunted me." "That's good," I said. "Yeah." He smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. "It is." We fell asleep facing each other, and I dreamed of open water and clear skies, of a horizon that stretched endlessly forward, unmarked by the shadows of what came before.